Hi, my name is Amy, and I will be presenting on writing frames today. First, I'd like to discuss the issues with the students have when writing. Students tend to use simple language at the beginning of sentences, such as and, then, the, a, and we see this quite often. Students' self-esteem is impacted by their inability to get started with writing assignments. They experience writer's block. This causes them a lot of stress and frustration. Oftentimes, students may not have experience with writing certain genres, and it's our responsibility as teachers to introduce those genres, which can oftentimes be difficult for us. Students who are deaf, English language learners, and or have learning disabilities have a limited vocabulary most often. For example, I work with deaf and hard of hearing students, and they do not get exposure to incidental language, which definitely limits their vocabulary compared to hearing children. So it is my job as a teacher to expand their vocabulary. Writing frames does allow me to do this. Okay, now we're going to go into the definition of writing frames. A writing frame consists of a skeleton outline to scaffold children's nonfiction writing. A skeleton framework consists of different keywords or phrases according to the particular generic form. Writing frames are a way to help students start a sentence. Here I have, I'm going to show you some examples of writing frames. I have several. So here's one example of a writing frame. I want to explain why blank. There are many reasons for this. The chief reason is, another reason is, a further reason is. So now you can see why. This would be great for students uh, doing an argumentative or persuasive assignment. You could even use this in science. Okay, and I actually use that particular writing frame to validate my point as to why teachers should use writing frames. I want to explain why writing frames are a great strategy to teach writing. There are many reasons for this. The chief reason is to help scaffold students' writing. Another reason is to prevent students from writing on a blank sheet of paper, which creates stress about what to write. A further reason is to enable all students to feel some success with writing, which builds self-esteem. So now you can see why writing frames can help students learn the writing process in a way that allows them to feel confident. I can honestly say that using this writing frame actually helped me better understand why it's important to use writing frames. It was laid out to where I could give one reason after another, but vary the language a bit. Okay, so here's some examples of writing frames that you could use in the classroom. This one is perfect to use in science. So how to conduct an experiment, what you will need, and then the steps in that experiment. It could also be, you could have the students building something, and this can talk about the process. For example, in the writing class that I have, we had the students describe how they made slime using this writing frame. Okay. And then there's also retelling a story. And this helps a little bit with sequencing. So you have the beginning of the story, what happened later, and how the story ends. And then it also talks about their favorite characters and why the story was interesting. This is one of my favorites, and this deals with story elements. So you have the character and the setting, the problem, the solution, and the conclusion. I use this quite often in my classroom because it targets a lot of skills that my students need to have, such as retelling a story, being able to look at the story elements. Okay. Next, we have how to use writing frames and when to use them. Okay, the teacher should begin with discussion and teacher modeling, move to joint construction, and finally have the child writing sentences using the frame. The students can make changes to the frame as needed. As the frame is only to be used as a rough draft of writing, it is really important that teachers stress this because we don't want students to just get stuck what's on the writing frame. We want them to know that they are able to make changes as they feel necessary. It's important for teachers to remember that not all the children in the class will need to use a writing frame. Just same as graphic organizers, it's up to us teachers to be able to distinguish what students need this accommodation and what students don't. It is a tool in the classroom and we need to use it appropriately. Frames are only a small part of the writing experience, so be sure to include a variety of other activities. For example, graphic organizers would be another tool. The frame is never to be used as the reason for writing. So that is not, you're not just going to pull out writing frames and say, okay, we're going to write today. You have to have a reason behind it other than just using the writing frame itself. It's a support that can be used to support a writing activity. Okay, when to use writing frames. Use writing frames when introducing a new genre of writing. So you have your narrative writing, your persuasive writing, and other various forms of genres that students need to be able to write. Use writing frames when students seem stuck on using and then over and over again. Use writing frames in order to help the student writing, adopt other writing genres. So one student might be really stuck on just writing personal narratives, or everything becomes a persuasive argument. So, and able to guide them to use various genres, it is important to have them use writing frames for things like that. This reason is similar if the student is having difficulty using the correct genre for the writing assignment, you use it. Another reason I use writing frames might be for sequencing and also introducing transition words. I think that is another reason to use writing frames. Oh, sorry, it kind of repeated here. So here are the pros and cons of writing frames. The pros is it helps students come up with ideals. So this helps scaffold their learning. It provides teachers a way to reinforce writing, and it also helps students extend their answers. And it also helps students write a variety of genres, helps students learn transition statements. Cons, it is too rigid or structured for some students. Some students do not require writing frames. It can also restrict students in writing in a way that the students will have a similar writing. It can be overused, which will lead to students not being well prepared for more rigorous writing in the real world. And this can also relate to them being able to write in middle school classes or high school classes if they're in elementary. And to finish up, here are my references that you can take a look at. There are some great tools in these references, even our Tavani book. There are some writing frames on page 130 and 131 that you may want to take a look at. Also, Pinterest has quite a few. I did pull up some on this website here that were helpful. And Lewis, Maureen, and David Ray. So Maureen Lewis and David Ray, sorry about that, are great resources to use for writing frames. I really like the ones that they had to provide. So, and another one was Literacy Light that I was able to pull up. Okay, and that is my presentation on writing frames. Thank you for listening.